Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Big Mike Sports, Atlanta born, Carolina raised, Detroit driven. I am your host, as always, Big Mike.
The one and only. Yeah, I'm back.
Going over a few game scores from our NFL Sunday. Interesting set of games, not the most exciting matchups on paper, but they ended up being pretty exciting, some pretty close scores. They didn't start that way. There were a couple of games that looked like they were going to be blowouts, but ended up being closer at the end. Then there were some other games that just kind of stayed as blowouts. But before we get into that, uh, leave us a little question if you're watching, and we'll answer it in a future episode. Love doing mailbag stuff, so hit us with your questions. But first, our main topic of discussion, that is the Dolphins and Bills. The Dolphins kind of met their match in terms of the Bills defense. The Bills defense came into the game only allowing 35 points on the season, so we knew it was going to be tough. But that Miami offense has been nuclear the first few weeks of the season, dropping 70 points in that game against the hapless Broncos defense. We'll get into what the Broncos did in their game in just a little while, but interesting stat: teams that drop 70 points in a game in the NFL now 1-6 the week after. Pretty big hangover after you leave it out all on the field, I guess. But A-Chain, the Texas A&M rookie running back for the Dolphins, continues to dominate. Uh, Only 8 carries, but 2 touchdowns off it and 100 yards. Those are some college numbers for sure. But the rest of the offense kind of struggled. The receivers not really doing a whole lot. Tyreek Hill getting bottled up. Tua not really having a whole lot of time to throw it, which has been really key to the offense's success early, with him getting the ball out like an average of I think like 3 seconds around that point. So if the defense is getting to you within 3 seconds and you can't get rid of the ball, you're not going to have a good time if you're Tua. So it's pretty tough if your offensive line can't hold anybody. Not exactly sure like what else to chalk it up to really, besides just the O line not giving them a lot of time. The Bills defense being tough as it is, and coming off that huge performance, maybe you're just feeling too good about yourself. You don't think it's gonna be too tough. Maybe you don't come in with the same amount of preparation. But anyway, and then also that Dolphins defense giving up 48 points. That's pretty ridiculous. The Dolphins defense has been kind of suspect the whole season, but that problem's been covered up basically by the offense being so good. No real point in worrying about your defense if your offense is outscoring everybody, since having the most points at the end of the game is how you win. But yeah, that defense, if the offense isn't running as you kind of expect it to be, with a kind of Star Wars offense look, the defense is really going to lose you games. They really need to figure that part of the game out because Josh Allen has had some struggles this year, but the Dolphins secondary made him look like the second coming of like Minnesota Vikings Brett Favre with 320 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. The Bills didn't do a whole lot on the ground with their running backs, but with Josh Allen throwing it like that the whole game, why even bother at that point? So yeah, definitely some questions that need to be answered with the Dolphins. They're still one of the best teams in the NFL by far. But yeah, when you go up against a team that has really good defense, like let's say the 49ers or someone like that, kind of akin to the Bills, you really need to have your offense be able to figure out what they're trying to take away from you and try to counteract that. And also, you got to fix that defense because allowing 48 points isn't going to win you any playoff games, especially with the Dolphins kind of having issues with winning playoff games and advancing in the playoffs. So definitely something they still need to figure out. I think it'll still be a good season for them, though. I don't see another late collapse happening this year like it did last year. And then in London for the Toy Story game, we had the Falcons take on the Jaguars. We had the Jaguars all the way in this game, considering it was at London, and we don't really believe in the Falcons' offense anymore. And they did not give us any reason to believe there, only putting up 7 points against the Jaguars' defense. That can be pretty tough, and of course, you're traveling like that, maybe not used to, playing in overseas like that in such a time crunch. But still, that Falcons offense really needs to figure it out because there's a lot more to winning football games than just feeding Bijan. Like, you can't have Bijan be your only player on offense, of course. Jonnu Smith got in there and got some receptions and some receiving yards. Where's Kyle Pitts? Why are you not using Kyle Pitts at all, let alone Drake London? Drake London's probably marooned on an island somewhere at this point. Yeah, in order to unlock the whole offense, you need to use all the talent you have instead of just giving it to Bijan and letting him carry it. Of course, he's probably going to be a pretty easy offensive player of the year candidate, but if you're trying to win games as an offense, like you put up 6 points against the Lions and then 7 points in this game, this is just ridiculous. Like you started off 2-0, started off pretty well, but the teams are already starting to figure you out, and you can't put anything up on the board. It's going to be a long season for them in Atlanta, and some people might be calling for Arthur Smith's job because the whole point of this year for him was that they're going to stay competitive, really grind out games, and stay in the game until the very end. But if your offense is getting blinked at halftime and your only score comes in the third quarter, yeah, a lot of cause for concern. But Jacksonville gets things kind of back on track a little bit. So good for them as they try to make a run for the division. And it's going to be key for them because this AFC South, like we said in some prior episodes, it's going to be tougher than a lot of people think.
Nice shot!
The big ticket here, the game that we were laughing all day about, is that Broncos Bears game. Of course, at the beginning of the game, first half, Justin Fields with the almost perfect day, going like 23 of 24, something like that with a few touchdowns. Really playing lights out in that first half, and the Broncos defense in I guess 3 halves, giving up 98 points. That's pretty atrocious stuff. But they were able to turn it around, and I think they blinked the Bears in the second half, being able to put up was it 24 of their own points to come out with the win in the end. And after such a almost perfect performance from Fields in that first half to completely collapse like he did in that fourth quarter, I think if you like compare the stats, he ended up going something like 4 for 11 in the fourth quarter after starting like 23 of 24 or whatever it was, and then that fumble. That fumble looked awful, just like one of the worst things you could do, and it basically lost them the game. So it's definitely not Justin Fields' fault that they're losing these games. Like he tried his hardest, but in the end, the old issues kind of came back to bite him. But there's a lot more that the whole team can do to kind of make it so that that fumble didn't, blow the game for them. But it's just a total collapse in the second half by the Bears. It might be pretty tough for them to win a game at this point. I mean, of course, the Broncos came in kind of thinking that they had something to prove after such a horrendous performance last week. But still, if you're the Bears, where's your fight? You're at home. The crowd was getting into it, and yeah, not a good sign if you're the Bears, especially with all the troubles that they've been having already. And then speaking of troubles, the Browns. Now, the Browns' offense isn't very good when Watson is on the field. Let's just put it that way. And then, of course, you have Chubb out as well for the rest of the season. But DTR got in there, the backup quarterback for the Browns. And I thought, I was excited to see him get in there because he did pretty well in the preseason, lighting it up. One of the best players in preseason. So I was kind of thinking, hey, maybe he'll have a little breakout game here in his first action. But no, it was not a very good game for DTR. He threw 3 interceptions. And the Ravens basically just phoned this one in. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot that they had to do. Lamar Jackson did his part, throwing 2 touchdowns to Mark Andrews and adding some on the ground as well. So, classic Lamar Jackson performance against the Browns. We all remember that one game where Jackson went to the locker room and then came back and destroyed the Browns. So just business as usual, really there. Then the Bengals. What on earth is going on with the Bengals? I mean, like putting up 3 points in this entire game against a Titans team that's not really in the game so much either. Yeah, this was one of those bad games. The Bengals. I don't know what they're going to do. This offense is completely hapless. They're looking like how they looked the first few seasons under Zach Taylor when they were trying to win 4 or 5 games at most every season. So yeah, I don't know what's up with them, but the offense is gone, and it doesn't seem to be coming back anytime soon. So yeah, one of the most like puzzling teams of the season is definitely the Bengals. The Titans managing to fall into a win somehow. They always seem to do that every once in a while, so I think that's what's gonna get them up to about 7 or 8 wins once again, as they seem to do every year. And then Buccaneers. The Buccaneers seem to be kings of the NFC South now, going 3-1 after their 26-9 win over the Saints. The Saints kind of like the epitome of a mediocre team right now, and the Buccaneers Really good at, beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, I guess. They've beaten some of the more middling teams. Baker looked pretty good, throwing 3 touchdown passes. And then Godwin, with Mike Evans being out, going for 8 receptions, 114 yards. It looks like this is the Buccaneers division right now. I mean, they don't really seem to have a whole lot of, competition right now. The Panthers fall into 0-4, Saints 2-2, and the Falcons having the issues that they have. So this could be a postseason run kind of year for the Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield, which could be a really interesting storyline there. And the Commanders almost beating the Eagles, hanging in there till the very end. I honestly thought that the Commanders would end up finding a way to win this game, but the Eagles just a little too good, I guess. They were able to match every punch. Jalen Hurts doing whatever he could to win the game, and then A.J. Brown finally having a breakout game. 9 receptions, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. That was a guy who was begging for the ball for the longest time, and he finally got his, really being instrumental in that win. And Sam Howell, uh, not doing too bad anymore. Keeping it clean, throwing 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Yeah, after being one of the league leaders in interceptions so far this season, and adding 40 yards on the ground. So pretty good game for him. You want to see maybe a little more to help them win the game and get over the top there, but still not a bad look for them being able to stay competitive in that game. Falling to 2-2 on the season, but still very much in it. And then the Rams and Colts. This was one of those games that was kind of weird because the Rams just left the back door open the entire game against the Colts. Anthony Richardson doing what he can to try and get the win. He hung in there to take some really big hits on some nice throws. And yeah, you just like his toughness and his tenacity there, trying to fight to keep the team in the game. Um, Not that the Rams were seemed to try very hard to win it, but they did end up coming out on top in the end. Stafford throwing 1 interception on a classic Stafford play, a little sidearm throw. And then Kyren Williams continuing his run of dominance along with Puka. Those guys are carrying the team right now on offense. 25 carries, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Kyren Williams. And then Puka, 9 receptions, 163 yards, and the game-winning touchdown in overtime. Those are a couple other Offensive Player of the Year candidates, or Offensive Rookie of the Year candidates, I guess. A lot of really big Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year candidates this year. Really talented rookie class that came in. And then with Anthony Richardson, 11 to 25. You definitely want to see that completion percentage go up, obviously, but he's been injured the past couple of weeks. So, not the best that we've seen, but it'll only get better. He was throwing it down the field a lot, though, with 200 yards on those 11 completions and 2 touchdowns to boot. So a good game for the Colts there. They are also one of those teams that remain competitive at 2-2, especially in that division. Looks like it's going to be like a 3 or maybe even 4-way race for that AFC South division. Richardson adding 56 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown as well. So, yeah, Colts still a dangerous team. Rams still hanging in there as well. Maybe one of the more surprising teams of the season because everybody thought that the Rams were kind of, hung out to dry a little bit. But McVay's a great coach. Players fight for him. They got good scheme there. So they're going to remain competitive for a while into the season as well. And the Vikings at Panthers. Someone's O must go. Yes, somebody had to win this game. And it looked like it was going to be the Panthers for a while. They got that pick six in the first quarter and then added in a couple field goals to take a 13-7 lead into halftime. But then the second half, they just completely fell apart. The Vikings able to capitalize, tacking on 2 touchdowns of their own to win 21-13. Those 2 touchdowns courtesy of Justin Jefferson, 6 receptions, 85 yards, and those 2 touchdowns. And the Panthers offense continues to struggle mightily. Like I've said before, I really think that you need to unlock Bryce Young and, let him throw it down the field or something because this kind of short, timid passing game isn't going to do anything for anybody. It's just going to make everybody kind of laugh at you and the mediocrity there. I don't know if, Frank Reich's the most aggressive coach per se. But yeah, really, really odd that they're not just trying to cut it loose, especially having not won a game yet this season. And you're at home too. So yeah, just not a good look for them. They really need to put something together here, because if it's like as bad of a season for them as it looks like it'll be, like 3 or 4 wins, you don't own your first round pick. Currently, the Bears right now sitting up top with the first 2 picks of the draft, something that I thought that the Cardinals would end up doing, but somehow the Cardinals and the Texans are both competitive, so now it's the Bears up there. If you win 3 or 4 games this year, you don't have your first round pick like that, then you turn around next year and you only win 3 or 4 games. Frank Reich is toast at that point, and then you're just going to be left in that kind of Cardinals position, um, when that they found themselves with Kyler and Josh Rosen, where you have kind of this lame duck third-year quarterback that you spent a very high draft pick on, and you better hope that you find the right coach, because if not, it'll be turmoil for that franchise for the foreseeable future. So I hope that they put it together there. With their kind of defensive-minded, running the ball kind of team. Throw some play action in there or something. They're going to go against the Lions in Detroit this upcoming Sunday. Not a good look for them, obviously. Um, it kind of feels like it might be a blowout for the Lions, but one thing that I do want to say, and we'll do a preview of this game a little later on, as we do with all the Lions games, but if the Panthers can pull out that play action, and the Lions are really keyed in on the run, they could really surprise them with some deep play action shots and maybe make some noise early. So, yeah, it remains to be seen whether they'll actually, have the wherewithal to actually try and open up the playbook like that. But yeah, not a good look for the Panthers right now. And then the Texans. There we go. We were talking about the Texans plenty. But the 30-6 win over the Steelers. The Texans are a good team. It certainly seems that way. Stroud really tearing it up. He's one of the season leaders in passing yards. 306 yards and 2 touchdowns in this one. And Nico Collins, 7 receptions, 168 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's turning in to a real stud receiver. The past year or two, however many years he's been in the league, I kind of saw this coming. I took him in fantasy one year, thinking he would do really well. He wasn't quite there yet, though. But now that he has the quarterback here, it's looking really good for the Texans. Like I said, they're one of the teams, one of all the teams that are so competitive in that AFC South division. So yeah, they're a tough team. Of course, this was at home. Uh, Always a great home crowd for the Texans, especially when they wear those red jerseys. But still, you got to feel good about it. And if you're the Steelers, that offense is toast. They're right up there with some of the worst teams in the league on offense. Just not a good look. I mean, of course, they're going to try and grind out the wins with their defense, but when you're playing an offense like this that's young and really explosive, honestly, it's going to be tough for you. Of course, with the Bengals being the way that they are in the division right now, and the Browns, when you're playing division games as the Steelers, you won't necessarily have to worry about it, and you'll be able to grind out plenty of division wins. But if you're going against the Ravens and their offense is doing what we know that they can, that would be tough for them. But maybe the Steelers will be able to, on the strength of those divisional matchups, be able to make it back to 500. Of course, Tomlin has never finished under 500 as a head coach in his career, but it kind of makes you wonder. The Raiders and the Chargers. This was a tight game all the way. A matchup of two of the coaches who are most on the hot seat in the NFL right now. Chargers able to pull it out just on the strength of their offense in the first half, putting up 17 points in the second quarter alone. No points in the second half, though. The Raiders were able to put up 10 second half points of their own. Aiden O'Connell in his first start for the Raiders looked all right. Kind of, basically what you would expect out of a rookie quarterback like that in his first start on this kind of team. But Josh Jacobs put in a huge performance. Fantasy owners of Josh Jacobs, of which I am included, felt pretty good about that. Breakout performance for Josh Jacobs there. Keep feeding him. He almost had a receiving touchdown at the end there that would have, put him even more over the top. But, still a great performance from him. And then the Patriots and Cowboys. Bill, it might be that time, man. You're losing 38-3 like that. I mean, of course, the Cowboys offense is one of the better offenses in the NFL. But then, the defense being able to do what it did to you also, yeah, it's not a good look for the Patriots right now, sitting at 1-3. Um, I mean, you might be able to beat the Jets in the division, but this could be a bad season for the Patriots. This could be like a 5-12 kind of campaign for them, and I think that might be Bill's signal to make his way out. And then plus, if McDaniels gets fired for the Raiders, then maybe McDaniels will become the next Patriots coach. Who knows? It might be Bill O'Brien, actually. That could be pretty good for the Patriots. But anyway, Belichick, one of the greatest defensive coaches that there's ever been. Obviously, it goes without saying. That is not a controversial statement at all. But yeah, it might just be that time. Tom Landry for the Cowboys, he went out kind of, ungloriously. So it might be that time for Belichick at the end of the year. Then a couple quick ones. Cardinals hanging in there for a while against the 49ers. Josh Jobs putting together a great fantasy performance. Picked him up on the waiver wire, owned in 2% of leagues, but he popped off for us when we needed him with Watson out. And McCaffrey, have yourself a day. Hat trick on the ground, 106 yards, then he added another one through the air. Ayuk as well, 6 receptions, 148 yards. Yeah, I think that the 49ers are the best team in the NFL now, of course. We all thought that that would be the Dolphins after they dropped the 70 bomb, but no, 49ers are still right there on top of the league. Definitely as the best team in the NFL. And then the Jets keeping competitive with the Chiefs. 23-20 win for the Chiefs in the end last night. Yeah, Zach Wilson, this might have been the best performance of his career, really. And Pacheco putting in some work on the ground. 20 carries, 115 yards, 1 touchdown. Um, yeah, it was just, I mean, it was 20-12 at halftime. So maybe the Chiefs kind of rested on their laurels there, only scoring 3 points in the second half. But maybe just a little bit more fight from the Jets in the fourth quarter might have sealed the victory for them. But that Chiefs defense is pretty tough when they want to be. So yeah, battle of the wills there. The Jets just didn't quite have it. But it still makes them feel a little better being able to keep in competitive with the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have had their own struggles as we've seen throughout the year with their receivers and stuff like that on offense. But that Jets defense still pretty tough. Um, Kind of surprised that it was this high scoring, honestly, 23-20. I mean, that's not the most high scoring game in the world, but considering the Jets defense being pretty tough and the Jets offense being so bad, yeah, 20 points against the Chiefs, we'll take it. We'll take it. Tomorrow we'll go into a little bit of some college football overview, and then later in the week we'll preview the Lions game. Maybe we'll do some fantasy basketball stuff. And hopefully we will answer some fan mail. So stick around for the rest of the week, and we will see you next time.